Hello, I'm David Burton with University of Missouri Extension, and this is a bonus session of Neighboring 101. Many of you know, Neighboring 101 meets once a month live on Zoom, and we hear from special guests and individuals from all across the United States talking about this topic of neighboring and how to strengthen our neighborhoods. And we can use that information to improve our communities or even for our own personal growth. Well, today is one of those special bonus sessions that we have from time to time. This is actually the third in a series of 5 sessions that we called Faith in the Ozarks. And these are designed to learn about the religious faith of different people that live in Southwest Missouri. But it has application to you no matter where you live in the United States. And it's a panel. We ask the same questions each time, really to try and get at the heart of how those different faiths are practiced. And so if you have a neighbor that has a different faith from you, these can be a resource to learn a little more about that. It can help you to understand just the people in your region or other individuals you may come in contact with. And we encourage that as a way to better interact and better understand your neighbors. So these Faith in the Ozarks sessions are co-hosted by University of Missouri Extension and Community Partnership of the Ozarks and Missouri State University. Most of these have been held at the Plaster Student Union in Springfield, Missouri. And so we'll get right on with this session that was held on September 19th in Springfield. And I'll let you watch these sessions. It's kind of a set format. So these generally run for an hour and a half, but I think you'll find it very interesting indeed.
I am so grateful that you are here. If you can't see, Jesse, I'm sorry, we've got this thing in the middle. That can't move, can it? Can the podium move? It's stationary. That's where it is. But I'm not unhappy. You're good. Okay. I ran out of programs, but if you need one, I can give mine away if somebody needs it. Welcome. I hope you found it okay. We're appreciative you're here. If you don't know what room you're in, this is actually the Faith Discussions in the Ozarks, which is part of a CPO grant that they got to have some what are called tough talks in our community. They wanted to gear some towards faith. And so that is, this is the third of a 5-part series in that. We have 5 people on our panel today, which I'm super excited to learn from them and grow as we go through some questions and kind of deep dive into kind of where's our philosophy, where's our thoughts. And I first want to excuse Dr. Stephen Berkowitz. He has fallen ill and he cannot be in here today, and so we've excused him for this. He will be back here in October for that discussion. So let me introduce myself. I'm Deanna Carpenter. I'm the chairman for the Have Faith Initiative Collaborative through CPO. And so if there's something in the community going on with interfaith or connection with nonprofits in the city, that's much of what we do. This is one of the pieces we do. If you want to come out and see something else in October, on October 11th, there will be a Faith and Blue. It's in collaboration with the police department. NAACP is a part of it. And it's where we build bridges of understanding and connect inclusivity within our community across police and community. And that will be on October 11th. I can share more about that if you want. There's also an election prayer night called Election Prayers for Peace, and that will be on November 4th at South Street Christian Church, and praying over just democracy. It's a nonpartisan prayer. There's 10 different faith groups praying and interfaith choir. So if you want to be in an interfaith choir, they actually perform several times throughout the year, and then there'll be another one of these in October and November. So that's what we have for the rest of 2025. Let me introduce you to our panelists, which I'm super excited about. We have from the Venues, which is a non-denominational Christian church here in Springfield. We have Pastor Chris Roberts. Pastor, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Dave, yeah. He's really fun. I've known, how long have we known each other? For a couple of years, yes, yes. We've spent some time in nature together, and we've enjoyed that. He's got a really cute dog, too. Just so you know a little bit about him. Right. And then we have Pastor Jeremy Alvarez from North Point Church, actually located in Nixa, but the Nixa and the Springfield one collaborate and do many things together. And so it's really not two separate churches, although locations are separate, they really act and do one purpose together, right? So, and Jeremy is so great to just jump in. I think it was the first time I met you and said, hey, you want to do this crazy thing? And he was like, I don't know. Yeah,
Deanna's a great recruiter.
Yeah. He said, yeah.
You need people, you need to run your team.
We have from Ekklesia, and actually who wears many different hats in our community, we have Rev Michelle Scott-Huffman. If you're not familiar with Ekklesia, it is a, maybe I'll just have you explain it later. I can kind of explain it, but it's not going to do it justice, but it is in connection to students, to campus ministry, but I know that Michelle will do a much better job of that. I said Stephanie because that is part of your life too. You can explain that if you want. And then we have from the Bahai faith, we have Carl Haworth, and he has been in our community for years, trying to actually connect our community in the Interfaith Alliance of the Ozarks for decades. Yes, but for decades, and helping with that. So that'll be exciting to hear about the Bahai faith and how they're alive in our community and their intersection. And then we have, I'm going to get it right, Giac, Vien. Okay, from our a Buddhist temple, the Dinh Buddhist temple here in town. And if you have not had a chance to go out there, it is beautiful. It is very respectful on the inside. As they gave me a tour, I would assume you would give other people a tour. It's just beautiful in how they connect ancestors and connect in the faith and progression of continuing yourself and improving yourself. And I don't know how many people knew that we had a live, flourishing Buddhist community with a temple here in Springfield, Missouri. So we want to make sure we highlight that. So before we start, Steve usually starts us off with a safe place message. And so I will just mention that. In these faith discussions, everything that we talk about, answer, and communicate with is out of respect and love and a safe place of sharing. So it's not a place to attack, to bombard somebody. If you're genuinely interested and want to learn and grow and ask questions later at the end, that's great. But this is not a time for conflict and polarizing. So we just want to make sure we know this is a safe space. So we will go from there, and let's start with Michelle. We're just going to jump in the middle. And then you will get to decide whether to take it to your left or your right to keep it interesting. Okay? So this is our first question. Can you briefly describe the community here in your Springfield area, what your congregation, your faith group looks like, the leaders, the place of worship, just in like 1 or 2 minutes, what that looks like so we can set the pace.
Well, it feels like that should be an easier question to start with, but yes, I can. And Stephanie is my wife. So I am a pastor's wife, and she is a pastor's wife, so that's kind of a fun situation. But I'm the campus minister with Ekklesia, and Ekklesia is a progressive ecumenical Christian campus ministry affiliated with the Disciples of Christ, United Church of Christ, Episcopal Church, ELCA Lutheran Church, and PCUSA Presbyterian Church. And because there's no interfaith chaplaincy here at Missouri State University, we also tend to serve a little bit as interfaith chaplains. So I am the sole clergy person affiliated with our ministry, and then we have some really wonderful interns and peer ministers that help us to do the outreach and connecting with students and things like that. So we're here at Missouri State. We just started a new student organization at OTC, and we're working on that at Drury as well. Carl.
Well, I probably am going to be the shortest spoken here, but because I'm going to use a lot of quotes understanding is not an official interpretation of the Baha'i faith. That's because we have no clergy. Our affairs are administered through elected councils at the local, national, and international levels. Our local community meets in homes, and currently we are gathered at the Fairbanks Community Hub on North Broadway here in Springfield.
And I see a couple of people I know. So I'm also known as David. My given name is David. Most of my friends call me Katya, but at the Buddhist temple, I'm Giac Vien. And the temple was founded by the local Vietnamese community in 2010 when they invited our teacher, the Venerable Thang Chan, to Springfield. And the temple itself was built in 2012, and we began English-speaking services there in 2017. It's an interesting blend. The Vietnamese services and community represent a combination, common for Vietnamese Buddhism, a combination of Pure Land Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. And that reflects our community's need for a place to preserve Vietnamese Buddhist culture, to really celebrate that and their language and their practice. And our English-speaking services are ecumenical, and that reflects our community's need for a place for people from diverse Buddhist backgrounds to encourage one another and to practice with the Buddhist teachings. We also welcome those of other faiths and no faiths without expectation of conversion and with mutual respect for our shared practices of wisdom and compassion. And we're also an active monastery, a home for monastics and temple attendants. And the goal is to create a place where people can encounter the Buddhist Dharma and build a community that's devoted to practicing Buddhist teachings so we can learn to embody compassion and wisdom more and more in our lives. So, pass it down to Jeremy.
I'm Jeremy Alvarez, and with North Point Church. We are one church with multiple locations. It's a model that's kind of been popular in this area. The Springfield campus is not the main campus, no matter what anybody from our Springfield campus would want to tell you. Springfield campus is our largest campus. It's right off there off I-44, and it's the original campus. It was started the movie theater on North Kansas Expressway, and they within the next year or two built out there, and then have built out several campuses since then. Nixa. There was one on East Sunshine for a while. We closed that one. There was one in Joplin for a while. We closed that one. We're not afraid of trying things. We're not afraid of failing. But the Nixa campus has been flourishing. We're on year 12 now. We just built a new building, but we're all about creating a safe place to find and follow Jesus. This is the Ozarks. It's the Bible Belt. You can't throw a rock without hitting a Christian church. But we have found that there are many with church hurt. There are many with just a lot of struggle just because of the way that others have lived out their faith and how that's bumped up against their lives. And so we've been a place where others can heal a lot of times and really develop an understanding of the words and the ways of Jesus. And so that's what we aim to do. And we do it in several locations. We have Springfield, Nixa, Republic. We have a set up tear down campus there, and then Springfield Dream Center, which is a hub for help and hope in anyway, not too far from here, and they're also a set up tear down campus, and Andy Thornton's doing a great job with our campus pastor there. So that's North Point.
And I'm Chris Roberts. I'm with the Venues. The Venues was started in 2012. And we are a church that, if you would kind of think about the Christian faith as an umbrella, we're probably on like the very extreme progressive side of the Christian faith umbrella. We kind of start with the position that people are good, and we kind of move from that position to say that we're better together. We are an open and affirming and open and celebrating congregation who meets largely on Sunday mornings over on East Battlefield, but then kind of our other thing that we do is bar church over at Mother's Brewery. In fact, they're doing that right now. And so they're drinking some IPAs and having a good time. And so we've been doing that for about a little over a decade now. And that's, I guess it's enough for a short version of what we do at the Venues.
Thank you. I have to tell you that the venue's building is fantastic. They opened it up just this past week for an interfaith event of a choir concert watch party. It was phenomenal. So they've got some great sound system in there and some great video if you ever need that too. So appreciate that. So our next question is, what principles inspire and guide your faith in particular? So think about values or principles and what that is in about 1 or 2 minutes. And let's go to the end. Let's go to Giac.
Oh, okay. The Buddha said that he taught just 2 things: understanding suffering and the end of suffering. And his life and teachings are all about charting a path to how to do that. So Buddhism is often kind of popularly seen or portrayed as a little bit negative because of the focus on suffering, but it's actually quite optimistic. It's actually one of the most optimistic systems I've ever encountered, because it says we're not stuck there. We're not abandoned to that. So it takes an honest look at suffering without being stuck in that suffering, and teaches us how to understand it, so that we can learn how to live more skillfully with more wisdom and compassion. And that's actually quite empowering, I think. We can train the heart mind in such a way that we can understand how to live with more joy, with more compassion, with more equanimity, with more love. And this is true at both the personal and the collective levels, extending to us an invitation to transform what the Buddha called the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, whether that's inside of ourselves or at work in systems and cultures of societies, into that generosity and joy and wisdom and love. And the temple's existence here at Dinh Quang is itself a testimony of this emphasis on transforming suffering into wisdom and compassion. Our founding community is largely made up of refugees and immigrants and their families who had to leave Vietnam during the 1970s and 80s to escape the violence and then tumultuous years following that conflict. So they came here with really, a lot of them came here with almost nothing, while they were also carrying some deep wounds from the violence of war. And creating a temple in a community was the fruit of years of working to transform that suffering into something beautiful. Similarly, many people in our community, English-speaking community, come to the temple because they are immersed in their own suffering, and they come out of that impetus to find a sense of teaching skills, encouragement in the community to support a growing sense of well-being. And so I'd say that's the heart of the Buddhist teachings and practice, is this transformation of greed, hatred, and delusion, and the suffering it brings, into well-being that inclines toward awakening, that's filled with love and kindness and joy, and wisdom and equanimity. Pass it down.
Okay. I was waiting for you to say who was next. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, whose name translates the glory of God, brought an essential message of unity, teaching that there is only one God, one human race, and that all the world's religion have been progressive in the revelation of God's will and purpose for humanity. He says no one should exalt oneself over another, that we should abandon all forms of prejudice. There is equality of men, women and men. There is the right and responsibility of each person for the independent investigation of truth. Faith must be consistent with reason, and that science and religion should be in harmony.
Just like that. So there are a couple of things that we're guided by. There are a lot of things that we're guided by in Ekklesia, and I'm going to talk a little differently than some of my friends up here, because what I'm talking about tonight is specifically ministry with young adults, and specifically in the higher ed context. So we as a ministry are guided by things like the prophet Isaiah speaking a message from God that says, do not let the eunuch say, I'm just a dry tree, and do not let the foreigner say, I don't belong here. I will bring all of these to my holy mountain, and my house shall be a house of prayer for all people. And by the teachings of Jesus that say that the most important thing we can do is love God and love one another. And so we try to just live that out in a way that is non-judgmental, that is inviting. And when we think about principles, we sort of operate on a framework that follows kind of a pattern that we've kind of discerned over the years. And that pattern is that first and foremost, people like the folks that I think have been alluded to over here, who come to us with some religious harm or at least some baggage that they're often carrying, that first those people have to belong, and then they actually have to break things down, to do some deconstruction in order to create the space to build the faith system that makes sense for them for the rest of their lives. And then this piece that we call becoming. So belonging, breaking, building, becoming is sort of the process that we follow in young adult ministry. And the reason for that is that everything about a young adult's development, faith development, psychosocial development, physical development, is to push back against everything in those years. And what we want to do is we want to embrace that, and we want to make a safe space for it, and we want to invite people to wrestle with big questions about God and humanity and come out with an authentic spirituality that makes sense for them and for their lives.
Yeah, I mean, we try to focus on the words and ways of Jesus. I think, with a couple thousand years of practice, we've done a really good job of adding things that weren't. It wasn't what Jesus said. It wasn't what he did. It wasn't what he instructed anyone to do. And so, he spent several years. He spent several years deconstructing what the Pharisees and the religious leaders would have been adding to Torah. And so we really try to focus on, what did Jesus say? What did Jesus do, right? When asked, which is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, we try to help people live that out. We try to encourage people to have daily integration of Scripture. We try to encourage people to find community that is also engaged in that same thing, right? We try to tell people, we try to help people to engage in an arrows out mentality. We teach that everybody's born with an arrow as a visual, right? That we all have an arrow, and it's either pointing inward or outward. Inward would be these things are self-serving. Outward is I'm going to be looking to serve and bless others today. And so really the struggle, because that arrow naturally points inward most of the time. I don't have to teach my kids, right, to look out for himself over his brother, right? It's just kind of in us. But also to what Chris is saying, I do believe that people are good, right? Because we are God's masterpiece. If he did create us, then we are good. If we are made in his image, then we are good. And so that's something too, because I do think that there has been a lot of opportunity over the years for people to just we are our own worst critics, right? And so we just beat ourselves up over day after day and week after week, and so we really do develop this sense of self that is so little. And God is, we believe that God is saying, kind of like in the Genesis story, who told you that you were naked? But instead he's hey, who told you that you were little? Who told you that you were worthless? Who told you that you were of no value? And so we try to help people to really reestablish that sense of worth and belonging that is so important to human flourishing.
Yeah, so the way that we kind of evaluate and do the things that we do at the venues largely surround 4 values. The first value for us is affirmation and inclusion, and that is kind of the first starting point that we believe that everyone as you are should be affirmed and celebrated and included, that you're part of the circle of who we are, that there's no possibility of exclusion in our worldview or in our faith space. The second piece of that is that we value intellectual curiosity. We believe that it's important to be understanding that we don't know all there is to know, and that we are better when we're asking questions. And part of that is just the humility that that involves. We believe that if you're gonna start a sentence with "I know," that you're probably wrong. And so we should start sentences by saying, like, I could probably be wrong about this, and we move from that position. One of our values is curiosity and skepticism, where we would say that there are lots of things that we have that have caused the religious trauma, religious hurt that people continue to speak about. And some of that is because we haven't asked the question of, like, why was that happening? What are we doing that has created that phenomenon? And then finally, we would say social justice is a value of ours that we center around believing that, though a lot of times people argue about, do you have this particular dogma, do you have this particular belief system about this particular whatever it is, but really what the faith that we push into says it is actually lived out in whether it is making sure that our unsheltered friends have places to stay when it's cold outside, or making sure that the hungry have food. Really a lot more of our faith is about a lived out experience of following the path of the Christ than it is about following necessarily a specific set of dogmas or doctrines. And so that's kind of the area that we are in at the venues.
I love listening to them. I don't know if you're feeling what I'm feeling. I'm hearing a lot of, we're here to help people heal. We're here to help them feel that they belong, that they're connected to community, to find a faith basis that's their own personal ownership of, and to value that, and then to act upon what is created inside of them, what they have realized is there, and especially that they're of value and they have purpose and meaning. We want that for everybody in Springfield, right? We want everybody in Springfield to feel like that they have a center and a foundation under them, and I think that all of you are doing that within your own faith, traditions, and ways. And so thank you so much for providing that for our community. In connecting with that then, going on to another thought, how do you then take that, and how does that guide you with what you're doing in connection to the community? So you have these values and these parameters, these virtues, as if you will, within your faith. Then how do you then connect in? Chris, you had mentioned the unsheltered, that drives you that way. For Jeremy, you mentioned the Dream Center briefly. So let's expand on that. Where do you connect into the community to fulfill that that giving piece within your faith? Let's start, Chris. Let's just go backwards.
Yeah. So there are several ways. This most recent year, we have intentionally decided that one of the things that we want to do is push upstream. At the venues, we have from day dot been a very big believer in being responsive to social needs. We feed a meal to our unsheltered friends in Springfield every single Thursday night, 52 weeks a year, and every single Friday morning, 52 weeks a year, to make sure that our unsheltered friends have dinner and then breakfast the next morning. And we've done that since for a long, long time. But this year in 2024, we made an intentional decision to start allocating a percentage of our budget to move towards social justice, which says there are downstream effects that have upstream causes. And let's figure out how to resolve those questions. Let's ask why people are hungry, or why people don't have the needs they do. This year there are two ways that we have intentionally decided to do that. One is through a partnership with Studi Alternative Center here in Springfield, which if most people were to name public high schools in Springfield, they would name 5. And that is short-sighted by 1. There is a 6th called Studi Alternative Center that is lacking in partnerships. And we have decided to go all in on partnering with Studi, a school where there are 250 approximately students who attend there, many of whom have been kicked out of their public school, and many of whom have been kicked out of their home. And so we partner with them, partnering with the teachers to make sure that when a student, for example, doesn't have access to free reduced lunch because the system that allows that is so bureaucratically arduous, that people can't fill out the forms, that the teachers have access to foods that they can give the students so that they can eat. Because we think that that is a a prerequisite, realistically, for learning, and learning is a critical key in order to progress on. The second area that we have partnered with is the Drew Lewis Foundation and a jury that helped establish something called the RISE program, which is started over in the Fairbanks area and is largely helping people who are living paycheck to payday lender. And the goal there is really to put payday lenders out of business. We think that there is a huge problem where if you are struggling and you have to make the decision of how do I feed my family this week, and the only way that you can do that is taking out a 300% interest loan, you're never going to get around that. And so we have started partnering with organizations and putting the money where our mouth is to volunteer in that, to contribute a pretty significant amount of money to doing that, to create centers and locations where people in community can both find community and then get out of the payday to payday lender cycle, like I said, to put payday lenders out of business. So those are a couple of the ways that we do that. And then actually, in 3 days, we have something called Venues Palooza, where we don't have service on Sunday, and we're going around to, I believe it's 21 different organizations in Springfield, and contributing something like, I don't know, 900 hours of community service instead of doing service on Sunday. That's this weekend. So.
Chris, thank you. That is fantastic that you're doing that. If anybody wants to get involved in any of the things that any of the panelists are talking about, afterwards connect with them so that maybe that can be an intersection for you to jump into the community to do some good. Jeremy?
We got it fleshes out differently at each of our campuses. Each of the leaders of the campus have kind of the freedom to figure out how that's going to work best in the community that they're serving. But overall, we are all pushing in and helping to support the Dream Center, and that's several things that Chris is talking about, like that the Fairbanks is like the RISE program. That's something that the Dream Center adopted and ran for several years. Community dinners on Wednesday nights. It's actually switching to Tuesday nights, but so we're all in on the Dream Center, every one of our campuses. But locally, at Nixa, like last night, we do a drive-through dinner, and so it's been a great way to make friends in our community. And there's no litmus test for receiving a meal. You just drive up and tell us how many you need, and we're gonna hook you up. Like it's not it could be from I absolutely have no funds and I don't know how I'm gonna feed my kids for the rest of the week, or it could be man, this week's been crazy. Every one of my kids has a practice, and my mom just got diagnosed with cancer, and I just don't have it in me. And like, great, yeah, for sure, you need a meal too. Like, it's everybody's living very frenetic lives. That's just 21st century America. And so if we can provide some encouragement and look at a mom with a bunch of screaming kids in the back and just say like, hey, here's 5 meals. I actually threw in a couple extras because I see you have a teenager in there. like it's gonna be okay. I think that helps. I want to be sure that our community, that North Point Nixa is always going to be the most generous and important partner of the school district. I don't think that a church of our size and influence really, I think, has a responsibility to be that. And so if I ever get word that somebody's contributing more, I up the number. Like it's just like, it's not a competitive thing, but it's like I just feel that this weight and responsibility that like no one's going to serve the community's kids better than we are. We're going to make sure that every kid has the resources that they need to go to school. We're going to make sure that our teachers feel loved in an era of just polarization and people questioning methods and motives of teachers. We had a gathering at the beginning of the school year where we invited teachers to come and pray and worship, and we just let them know, like, hey, we are nothing but supportive of you. You're not going to find a critic in North Point. You're going to find a very excited supporter of you. Like we've got your back 100%. If you guys need anything, let us know. And so that's a part of it as well. And always trying to get better. We do not have it figured out by any means. Our community's needs change. Nixa is a growing community, and so I don't know if there's anybody in here from Nixa, but like, man, like our community, and I would consider myself a leader in the community as well. And so I would be in this, but we love to pat ourselves on the back and talk about how awesome Nixa is. However, one of the things that's not getting talked about is the increase of poverty and how it's difficult to access resources in Christian County. And so I think that we need to be at the leading edge of that, of figuring out what the solutions to those problems are. And while I say we need to be, I don't think we have been yet. I think it's something that we're working on. It's something that we're whiteboarding and trying to figure out how to do better. And but I do believe it should be a focus of ours in the next couple of years for sure.
Thanks, Pastor Jeremy. I have a question for you. The school districts, do you partner with Springfield Public Schools and Nixa both?
Yeah, so that's all going to be by campus. The Springfield and Dream Center campuses will definitely work closely with the Springfield School District. Republic works closely with Republic, and then we work really closely with Nixa.
So if there's somebody that's out there that's listening and they want to do something more with the school district, are you open to partnering with other faith organizations and, multiplying your efforts?
Yeah, for sure. The more the merrier. We don't have a monopoly on kindness. So we are certainly open to partners for that.
Okay, so if you're out there and you're another faith organization that wants to lift the school that Jeremy is already talking about, it's obviously something that they're one of the pieces that they're passionate with. Tie in right there. Okay, Rev Michelle.
Yeah, so I'll start in and go out. So one of the things that we have done as a ministry is we've opened a building that we own that we had previously leased to a fraternity. We decided we could do something more aligned with our mission, and we opened the Multicultural House. So it's a 40-bed house right on the edge of the MSU campus, and we advertised it specifically to sort of people of difference, international students, students who are neurodivergent, queer and transgender, non-binary students. We did some work in the house to make the bathrooms on 2 floors such that those floors could be gender inclusive and they could still have privacy. And so we've created this intentional living space where diversity is not an afterthought, but it is really the point, that we're figuring out how we can live in intentional community with people who are different from us in lots of ways. We share meals together every Sunday night and just really show up and support one another. One of the things that has started to happen is the students in that house go out and collect food to fill up a whole row of cabinets in the kitchen and to label it for everyone. So that anybody who needs food in the house can make use of that food, and they're just really taking care of each other. This year I saw a couple of students who had kind of fallen off the path with school, and other students that sat down with them and helped them fill out their FAFSA and helped them get registered and sent them off to that first day of school when they didn't think they would end up being a student this year because they just didn't see a way to make it work, and they're really taking care of each other. Outside of that, we take students every year to the Interfaith Leadership Summit, and in that space they really learn how to be leaders and particularly to lead around service to community. So in that work we are able to share our differences and share the things that we believe and act out of our deeply held beliefs to serve one another and to serve our world. We do that by identifying shared values as interfaith leaders, and then just to use those shared values to make the world a better place together. And then finally, we also are kind of into the upstream thing. We would like to see change happen at the levels where the decisions are being made. So we, as much as possible, train students in community organizing, so they can learn how to be change makers in their community, but also we typically go to the state capitol a couple times a year. The Missouri legislature makes it super easy for us to have to go testify on lots of really bad bills, and so it gives our students good practice. And so we try to sort of make an impact really close in and just let it kind of radiate out as much as possible. I will also say I'm one of the coordinators of the Crisis Cold Weather Shelter at the Fairbanks. And so you can find me there on nights that it's below 32 degrees between November 1st and April. So if you want to volunteer in that system, You know where to find me.
Thank you, Reverend Michelle. I do want to give a shout out to the International House and the work that Reverend Michelle is doing over there. I've seen it firsthand. It's fantastic. They do have a library there that they've said, please, if you have books from your own individual faith groups, whether, you know, what they might be, they will take all of them that you want to donate and put them in their library, so that it's a very diversified library for people to look through and do. They have art, all sorts of things there at the International House. And I do know that there have been crisis times, even just recently, where I've called Reverend Michelle and said, there is a student who is in need, and what can we do? Can we open your doors? Do you have a room? And there's Reverend Michelle greeting me at the International House with a young adult that needs help and needs to be lifted up to be successful in life. So I know that that's it. And then also, if you are on the college campus and you're interested in going to Chicago to the Interfaith America, I had the privilege of going, not this past summer, but the summer before, as a representative, because Reverend Michelle was on sabbatical. It is fantastic. And so youth leaders, if you'd like to go get trained in interfaith relationships, bridge building, and then a lot of times they give you a grant. You can come back to campus and you can do a project to connect people and to bridge build and make your university a more inclusive, understanding place. Am I right about that? Yeah. So that's all of that. So Carl, we're on to you. Carl's been in the community a long time. I know you're small, but you do have a big impact. So tell us what you've got going.
Well, we have nothing the magnitude of what's been described so far. Our biggest efforts presently are trying to collaborate with other organizations, other faith groups, to help make an impact in our community. Fairbanks has been mentioned several times this evening, and we just started renting a space in Fairbanks because we are small enough numbers. We've been meeting in each other's homes, but you know, we started to grow. We had a refugee family move in from the Democratic Republic of Congo that had spent 2.5 years in a camp for refugees in Tanzania. This has changed our picture in that not only do we not speak the same language, we don't have the same customs, but they were Baha'is in Africa, where they come from. And, you know, it's kind of like being a Baha'i in Springfield is kind of like speaking a foreign language in and of itself. We're small in number, we're small in resources, but we do try to make impact in our community, because being of service to our fellow man is a centerpiece of the Baha'i faith. I wanted to share just a bit more about a question related to the important religious virtues in your faith. And according to Baha'u'llah, the virtues and attributes pertaining unto God are all evident and manifest, and have been mentioned and described in all the heavenly books. Among them are trustworthiness, truthfulness, purity of heart while communing with God, forbearance, resignation to whatever the Almighty has decreed, contentment with the things His will has provided, patience, nay, thankfulness in the midst of tribulation, and complete reliance in all circumstances upon Him. These rank according to the estimate of God among the highest and most laudable of all acts. All other acts are, and will ever remain, secondary and subordinate unto them. So we're in process of trying to make ourselves as individuals and ourselves as community to fulfill what I just shared with you.
Thank you, Carl. I would say that the Baha'i faith are huge collaborators. They're at every Interfaith Alliance meeting, have faith initiative meetings that are within our community, always doing an outreach, trying to make sure that even the smaller faith organizations that are out there are invited and feel a part of. So thank you for all that you do with that. Carl, before you move on though, tell everybody how large the Baha'i faith is as a world faith. It's pretty large from my understanding, right?
Yeah, I don't have absolute figures in my head, but I think worldwide it's somewhere in the range of 7 million adherents. And interestingly enough, it's not the most numerous religion in the world, but it is the second most widely spread religion in the world, following only Christianity in the number of countries and territories wherein Baha'is reside.
Thanks, Carl. That helps you. Yeah.
So I would, I think that one of the core pieces of this for us, we're similar in that we're a smaller community of faith as well, but the spiritual care part is a big thing. And it's part of how we belong to our community. We're located off of High Street, northwest part of Springfield in Zone 1. We're right near John B. Hughes apartment complex and such. This is an area we get, people come from all over because there's not another Buddhist temple nearby. But in our own location as well, we're constantly interacting with coming up into interactions with poverty, with substance use disorders, with domestic violence, and as well as with religious harm is another big theme as we've mentioned several times tonight. So, and the other part of that spiritual care that a lot of people are seeking help with is issues of loss, whether that's illness or death or major crises, how to reintegrate after experiences of loss. And so I think that is a key part of what we offer. In terms of more specific or more practical expressions of that, we do a lot of international relief, and that's especially true with our connections in Vietnam. And so just this year we had a major relief mission into northern Vietnam, provide medical and school supplies to some impoverished regions there. And now we're part of a network that's mobilizing relief after the typhoon. So these kinds of projects are a big part of our community. Locally, we've, since the founding of at least the English-speaking service, we've been involved in providing food relief. We were an early partner with, used to be a wonderful little organization called Good to Go Mobile Food Pantry, and we partnered with them early on in our existence to provide emergency meal kits, and that's changed over the years, and now we provide emergency meal kits, non-perishable food items for Rare Breed Youth Center every month. And another big expression of this for us is prison ministries. Locally, we have a meditation class at the Federal Medical Prison here in Springfield, and we also are a member of the Buddhist Association of the United States Buddhist Prison Correspondence Program, where we serve as mentors for inmates who are going through a program of personal transformation related to the Buddhist teachings. They go through a structured course, and we provide mentors for that program. We are tiny, so another piece for us is we emphasize a lot, I think similar to what Carl was saying, personal involvement. We try to encourage all of our folks to be very involved in volunteering, as well as their employment, to be as much as possible expressions of that wisdom and compassion that's the heart of the Buddhist teachings. So you'll find a lot of us involved in various issues. Some of the more prominent kind of volunteering that's been a part of our community has been related to LGBTQIA+ issues of justice, climate justice, as well as anti-racism. And finally, and connected with that last note, internally, we're also doing a lot of work in terms of addressing the woundedness that exists kind of from a socio-political experience between Vietnamese and North American folks. That still is open. There's a lot of open wounds on both sides from the Vietnam War era. And another dynamic of that is the experience of Asian American Buddhists in the United States and how that bumps up against white dominance and white supremacy. There's a lot of cultural appropriation that happens within popular expressions of Buddhism, a lot of commodification of Buddhist practices as well, and a lot of remnants of colonial, more than remnants actually, of colonial mindsets when it comes to Buddhism. And so we're trying to do a lot of work as well on those issues as we learn how to be Buddhist, walk the Buddhist path together across cultures, across geographies and cultures, and so that's also a really important part that's internal in our temple. Thanks.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody contributing to that. And you can see there's so much that our faith groups within Springfield do in the Springfield community. They really do majority of the outreach, the lifting, the nonprofit connections are really through our faith entities, and so we appreciate them. I want to go switch on to a question, may or may not have been given to you ahead of time. But we'll shift to them. What is one or two just I guess festival, holy days, something that's meaningful to your faith that you practice, maybe on an ongoing basis, whether that's a specific day or a time frame, and what does that entail? Take, maybe 2 minutes to share with us that. And Michelle, you seem ready to go, so I'm going to jump to you in the middle, and then I'm not going to go in any sort of order. I'm just going to bob around, okay?
Awesome.
So Reverend Michelle.
So I'm going to do 3. As a group that is progressive Christian, but also we do a lot of the kind of interfaith lifting here on campus. One of the things that we host every year is a winter holiday showcase. And in that we get to kind of showcase the dozens of holidays that happen during the winter season. We invite interfaith partners from around the community. Last year we partnered with the Multicultural Resource Center, and it was an interfaith bingo. It was super fun, and so that's an event that we coordinate every year just to help raise awareness that, like, whatever your holidays are, they're not the only ones. And so perhaps when someone says happy holidays, we might not get offended, but we might appreciate that they were sharing whatever their holidays are with us, whoever we are. So that's one. The second one is that in October every year we do a worship service called Pride, Praise, and Protest as a part of LGBTQ History and Heritage Month. And it's a really important worship service in the life of our community that is about inclusion and celebration of LGBTQ identities and the ways that God loves each and every person deeply beyond their wildest imagination. And the protest piece is that we want people to sort of get some courage from that and be able to boldly proclaim who they are in the world, and to say that you can't take religion from me, you can't take these spaces from me. And so that's kind of a big deal in ours. My favorite worship service of the year, as you know, students go home before Christmas really gets started. We usually have 1 or 2 worship services after the season of Advent starts. And we do a worship service every year that we call Advent and Christmas Mashup. And so in this service, every week of Advent is 10 minutes. And we light the candle, and we sing the songs, and we read the scripture, and we do a meditation, and then it's the next week all of a sudden. And then we celebrate the birth of baby Jesus before it's all over with. And it's a little bit ridiculous, but it's a way of saying that this really important holiday season in our community, we're going to observe it as a community, even though some of them are going to go home and do other things. And so that's one of my favorites.
Michelle, I want to come to that.
Yes.
Advent and Christmas mashup. Oh, coming. All right, Reverend Chris.
Sure. So as whatever. So as part of the larger Christian umbrella, you know, we do. I mean, we obviously have like Christmas and Easter, and I'm sure that will get spoken of as well. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, as far as like a festival that, or a part of a celebration that we do, surrounds like the reclamation of things like communion and baptism. Because we know that those, as a part of exclusion for a lot of people, have been a part of the church hurt that has been for a lot of people. And so one of the things that people would sometimes ask, like, what does baptism, I mean, some of these like church actions look like at a place like the venues? And we are really passionate about the fact that those things are open for everyone. That there's, it's a practice that we do regularly to say that, for example, the table is never closed, and that that baptism is a description of a new life that you see within yourself, the awakening within you. And so while oftentimes those are things that are celebrated or used to exclude people, we want to be really intentional about reclaiming those pieces at the venues and saying that they can be used as a space of healing. One of the things that was really impactful last year for us was that we hosted an international conference at the venues called Theology Beer Camp, which was spectacular. We had about 600 people from across the globe there, and the way that that concluded was an entirely prayer-led communion, and the process of saying, you know, here are folks who have often been told that the table does not belong to you, but not only does it belong to you, but we want you to lead it. And we think that there's something really powerful in using these benchmarks that oftentimes have been used for harm and exclusion to say that they actually can be empowering. And so while there's a lot of other holidays that we could talk about, I just wanted to share that that's a thing that we've been really interested in and focused on doing, especially lately at things.
Pastor Chris, thank you. That was eye-opening. You know, I don't know all the hurt there is around that. And so I appreciate that you are intentionally working on healing that within your faith organizations, within our communities. So thank you. Carl, you ready to jump in?
Let's go. Water may be deep, but let's go. Well, I like to preface by saying that the Baha'i faith believes strongly in all the major known religions of the world. But, and I will shortly describe one of our Baha'is observances. But the primary reason we don't observe them all is, I don't know if there's enough room on the calendar for us, but you know, we could observe the Buddhist, the Christian, the Muslim, the Zoroastrian, the Christian. It goes on. And like I said, our basic belief is in there's one God, and he has manifestations that appear roughly every 1,000 years to renew his word. And I'll share this. God's purpose in sending his, whoops, I'm at the wrong one. The Festival of Rizwan is a 12-day festival that is celebrated by Baha'i communities around the world from the end of April to the beginning of May each year. It commemorates the 12 days that Baha'u'llah spent in the Garden of Rizwan in Baghdad in 1863. During this time, he declared himself to be a manifestation of God, or some people would call it a prophet, and revealed the spiritual principles that are the foundation of his teaching. The name Rizwan translates as paradise. The Baha'i faith has 9 holy days where work is to be suspended on those days, and 4 or 5 intercalary days to adjust for a 19-month annual calendar. So we operate on a different calendar, just as, you know, there are several different calendars among the religious communities. The Baha'i faith inaugurated a 19-day and a 19-month calendar. And the intercalary days that was just mentioned is that time between the end of the year and the beginning of another, which is part of our celebration days where we give gifts and enjoy each other as a community.
Thank Thank you, Carl, I appreciate it. Pastor Jeremy.
I mean, very, Christmas and Easter for sure. You know, but we have fun with it. I mean, I don't know, I find myself craving tradition sometimes because we're very non-traditional and we're kind of like, I don't know, we do things that people scratch their heads at a lot. Like, a couple years ago, I was just throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks, and so we did burros and churros for Christmas. And so we had, like, I promised everybody donkeys and churros, right, for Christmas services, and the donkeys did not show up. And so, but the guy's like, I can get you goats. And so we had goats that were not kid friendly. They did not engage with the kids at all. And we had a bunch of churros and a bunch of hay in the room and then fake snow, and it just made an epic mess. It was a terrible idea. Actually, a good idea, terrible execution. So things like that. We just, we're not afraid to try things. Just have fun. We want kids to have positive memories related to the faith experience. And so that's a big deal to us because a lot of their parents are coming with negative experiences related to faith experiences, and their parents are like, I'm gonna give it a shot because I really want this for my kids, but at the same time, I just don't know. And so we try as hard as we can to really give kids a positive experience. I would say baptisms are a big deal for us. We really go all in on celebrating those. We try not to have a barrier to entry there. The example that we see in the New Testament is is you decide to be a Jesus follower and you get wet. There's not a bunch of classes. There's not a bunch of, like, you don't have to do a bunch of things and check a bunch of boxes to get dunked. And so we really lower that barrier to entry. And then we celebrate like crazy. We throw a party. We do a lot of decor. Like we make sure that, like, we're letting everybody know, like, hey, if you're part of this community and, like, you have made that profession of faith, we expect you to be loud. Like, we expect you to show these people so much support because it is not easy. It's not easy to get in front of that many people and get wet. I mean, people are so insecure about that, right? They're just like, I would rather not a bunch of strangers see me wet. Like, I don't know what it is, but we try to really celebrate people and make that a special thing, and so try to be really intentional about that. Communion would be another one that we I try to, and when I have opportunities to lead communion, I try to really remind people who was present at the first example of the Lord's Supper, and so. Because people are sitting there wondering, like, am I able to participate? And I'm like, well, Peter was there and he would deny Jesus within a matter of hours, right? We have Thomas who would doubt, right? Who would be unsure of the risen Jesus. You had Judas who got the whole ball rolling with the crucifixion thing, right? And so I'm like, if you have any wondering if you are able to participate in this sacrament, please don't wonder, because there were some wild characters there at the table, and so please feel free to participate, and then also don't feel pressured to participate. That, like, hey, this is something that, like, we don't want you to feel like your lack of participation would mark you as, like, oh man, they're not a follower, like, because we are very open with, like. Very frequently, I will say to our congregation, I know not everybody here is a follower of Jesus, and I love that. And we're just glad that you're here checking out the claims of Scripture, and we hope that you can get some clear. I hope that we can give you today a clear picture of Jesus, and that we try to model. If we could be any Bible character. We have chosen, we would love to be the tree in the story of Zacchaeus, because Zacchaeus climbed the tree to get a clear picture of Jesus. And so we remind our team and we remind our volunteers, be the tree that somebody climbs to get a clear shot. And that's gonna be our aim every single time we get together. And so yeah, obviously our sacraments and our holidays and stuff like that are no different.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm curious. I want to get on Giac, but hold your thought on that one. Do you do baptism by immersion? Okay, and what about you, Pastor Chris? Is it baptism by immersion?
Whatever is celebratory for the person.
Okay.
So we have done baptism by immersion, which means kind of like the dunking, but we've also done like sprinkling, and we've done pour over. Basically, any way you can make coffee, we can do it baptism.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody state it like that. That analogy now is in my head.
Just don't do the drip, it's not.
Oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And then is it by a certain age or a certain accountability, or is that just open?
Yeah, so for us, like we want, and so I did this with my own son, because you know he was seeing people get baptized. He wanted it, and I told him, I was like, listen, like if you can explain the gospel to me, and you can give me a solid reason why you want to get baptized, like we're not like I'm not gonna baptize you because you want the gift back. Like I'm just not. Like I'm not.
Wait, there's a gift back?
Yeah, so well, I said we want people to feel celebrated, right? And so we make sure that we make it meaningful for them. But I held my son off for a solid year, and so that was a whole cycle of we do it quarterly, so that was a whole cycle. And finally, it's funny because he said almost the very thing that we see the Ethiopian say to Phillip. He said, well, what keeps you from being baptized? And so my son, he told me, he's like, why are you keeping me from being baptized? And I was like, I think you're ready.
And what about you, Chris, age-wise?
Yeah, so like we will baptize infants as well as anywhere on kind of the question of that. Part of that is because as part of the celebration of where people come from, there is a part of the process that baptism for several people, for baptizing an infant, says like you're a part of this community. And we think that there are mile markers in your life that we as a society have gotten way out of the way of marking mile markers. Like most of the time, if you think about the things that you celebrate in your life, there's like graduation and hopefully maybe a few other things. But many of our mile markers that we have in our lives, we've lost as a society in the last several generations. If you kind of look back in recent American history, people would buy houses and get married and have kids. They had these certain life mile markers, and a lot of those have just kind of been erased. We think it's helpful to give people mile markers, and some of those can include baptism. And so we would suggest that whether it's an infant who is largely being baptized as a celebration for their parents, oftentimes, or whether it's an individual who says, like I recognize what we would say like the Christ within me. We would say, yeah, let's do that. Like, and we're happy and excited to do that. So there's no like litmus test on that as far as like a belief system. Even. If someone wants to be baptized, well, yes, let's do it.
Okay. All right, thanks for answering those. I just wanted to clarify maybe there was some differences of what that word baptism might mean in different faiths. Right, yeah.
Yeah, so we have lots of minor holidays, lots of days dedicated to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but we have 3 big holidays that we celebrate as community events and joint services with at the temple. We use the lunar calendar, so the dates kind of shift around and by year. The first one is usually late January, early February. It's Lunar New Year. It's our biggest kind of party celebration that we have. It's a gift-giving time. We have a watch party and a big celebration on whatever night Lunar New Year actually falls on, New Year's Eve, and then the following Sunday we'll have a service that also kind of from a more Buddhist ceremonial standpoint kind of commemorates that time of looking backwards for where there's healing that needs to happen from what we've experienced the past year, where there's growth to celebrate that's happened in the past year, and then to look ahead and make commitments, aspirations for how we want to begin anew and what the new year will hold. So that's kind of our biggest party holiday. And then usually sometime in late April or May, we have Vesak, and I often explain it as if you took Christmas and Easter and mashed them together, that's Vesak for us. It's a celebration of the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, his birth, his renunciation of the worldly life, his enlightenment, his teaching of the Dharma, and his death and achievement of parinirvana. And in turn, then it's also a celebration of Buddhist community. So it's all these things kind of rolled into one. It's Buddha Day, and the emphasis, though, kind of the central ceremony of that holiday, we have a ceremony of bathing the baby Buddha to be. So we have a statue of the baby Buddha, and then you ceremonially or ritually wash him with a ladle, and you do that 3 times as an aspiration. You set aspirations as you do that that your life will be increasingly free from harm to yourself, harm to others, harm to the earth, increasingly full of good and wonderful things, and then ultimately to have freedom from suffering, all suffering, through achieving awakening. So that's a kind of a unifying holiday where we celebrate the Buddha's life and our life as those who practice with the Buddha's teaching. And the third holiday is Ulammana, or Vulan in Vietnamese, and this is our ancestors' holiday. I think it's a really powerful celebration. It has its origins in a text, a Buddhist text, where one of the Buddha's followers, named Mahamogayana, after his enlightenment, he has a vision of, he wants to express gratitude. He gets enlightened, and his first inclination is, I want to thank my parents, for giving me this chance to be alive and to practice and to achieve enlightenment. And through this vision, he realizes his mother is dwelling in the realm of the hungry ghosts, and he wants to help her, and everything he does falls short. So he goes to the Buddha and says, what can be done? And the Buddha says, in this situation, you need the whole community. And so they bring together all the monastic community to practice, to dedicate their practice to the relief of suffering for Mogayana's mother. And that's successful, and that becomes the basis of all these practices, where we're looking back at ancestral suffering, for suffering that's been handed down through the generations. It overlaps a lot with now how we think about intergenerational trauma and those kinds of concepts, and gives us some tools from which to look at those experiences without being overwhelmed by them, and instead have some practical ways to heal. So on those days, it's dedicated, a lot of the practices are dedicated to honoring ancestors, honoring parents. There's a rose ceremony where we honor our parents, especially our mothers. We have ancestral healing services in the afternoon, and we end with a hungry ghost ceremony, which is a fantastic, both at a Buddhist cosmological level and also at a psychological level for human psychology. Is I think a very powerful and healing service for working through those deep woundedness that we have often experience as humans. So these are all our holidays are open to the public. If you'd like to feel like you've spent a day in Vietnam, you're welcome to come join us. As Carl knows, that the days can get very long, and
you might want to learn to sit on the floor on a pillow.
we have chairs, we have pews along the walls, but yeah, we do a lot of floor sitting and for a long time. But if you don't have to stay for the whole day. There's also a wonderful, always wonderful food. Usually lots of socializing and games. Usually karaoke. Gotta have some singing in there. And always a celebration of our shared humanity. So you're welcome to join us for those holidays if you're ever so inclined.
Thank you so much. A lot of these holidays they can post on the Interfaith Alliance of the Ozarks page as well, if you're interested in connecting on that Facebook page. I'm going to turn the time over to you for the next little bit. If you have questions for anybody on the panel that you wanted more explanation about, or in particular you just are curious about, keeping in mind that this is a safe space.
can start the first question because I have to go. I have been here since 8 a.m. in the morning. I can barely open my eyes. Is this working? Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I love the tones of your voices. Everyone has a distinct tone that made me awake. So, all of the services that you do are very helpful for the quality of lives, right, of your people. So, that's great. But we understand that everyone has a time in this life, right? Has a station you have to leave. So what is the fate in your faith group? What will happen after a person dies? Whether it's a good person, bad one,
So,
you know?
so when you pass on, when you die, what is that? What is that? Pearl? For you?
Sure,
Make it
I'll
short.
go first. Yeah, I'll try to make it short. As Baha'i, Baha'u'llah said more about the afterlife than any other manifestations have. But he said, you have but a small need to know. You don't need to know beyond a certain point, because it doesn't benefit you in this life to know exactly what the next life is. He describes it similar to a child in the womb of his mother that is developing for the life to come. And from a Baha'i standpoint, we in this life are developing spiritual virtues or godlike virtues to be used in the next life as the primary means of communication, interaction, everything that is done. So if you learn mercy, justice, patience, forbearance, these central virtues that we all have talked about, then you will be in a position of not sitting in the corner isolated, but part of the next life community, so to speak. And that is our one, individually, that is our purpose in this life, is the development of those qualities. At the point of death, our understanding is that you will get a flashback of your life, your total life, and you will also be given the understanding of those things which you chose not to do that you should have done, or for those things that you did and should not have done. And you will be probably, this is me now talking here, my concept is that not so much God will be your judge, you will be your judge, because you will be given understanding of the reality of spiritual life. So I'll let go with that.
Who else wants to do that one? Anybody?
So we would obviously start by expressing intellectual humility here and saying that we clearly don't know. But we would say that what we think, and our best space right now on it is to say that we believe that ultimately everyone will be reconciled to the divine God, the light, whatever you want to call that, love. And the way that we see that is that after we have passed this phase, this life, that the love that indwells us each will be reconciled together into what the afterlife looks like. And so we think that the fear that happens because of teachings sometimes of separation from each other, separation from God, separation from love, the source, etc., has been really harmful. And we believe that Christ is sufficient to reconcile everyone. And so that's where we believe that.
Yep.
I think I can say something. I hesitate to say too much because Buddhist worldview is a little more unfamiliar, so it's difficult to be concise. So I'll try to err toward incomplete instead. But Buddhism is interesting in this way, and of course there's a huge variety of Buddhist sects and denominations, and so there's going to be varieties of explanations of this. Try to keep it simple. Buddhism teaches both that there is what we experience as a self is a dynamic, changing process. There's not a fixed self that is unchanging or eternal in that sense, but it's always changing, and that is seen as a really good thing, because that means that the suffering that we're experiencing right now is also impermanent. It can come to an end, that we can learn and grow in such a way that we can transcend that suffering and come to a place of awakening. So in whatever ways that experience of self survives from death to death and is reborn, in Buddhist cosmology, there's the cycle of samsara, which is this endless wheel of suffering, that we have this sense of having gone through this over and over and over again. And a key part of Buddhist practice is the experience of what's called in Pali samvega, which is disenchantment or disillusionment. It's this idea, this experience that this isn't going to work. Relying on greed, hatred, and delusion is just not ever gotten me anywhere. So some Buddhists, many Buddhists, and historically Buddhist cosmologists believe that literally. There's an increasing number of Buddhists who believe it more symbolically or psychologically, but the point is the same, that we can look back and see reliance on greed, hatred, and delusion doesn't work. It doesn't bring about it into suffering. And the Buddhist goal is to exit that cycle of suffering through awakening. And one of the markers of attaining awakening is that you're completely free of greed, hatred, and delusion. So it keeps us humble, right? Because you don't have to look very long before I'm not enlightened yet. And so there's a series of rebirth. There's the ultimate end of nirvana, where you exit that cycle. And I'd just also add, in the Bodhisattva path that's prominent in Mahayana Buddhism, there's also this wonderful aspiration to practice for the benefit of all beings. So you dedicate your practice over however many lifetimes it takes, so that everyone achieves awakening together, and no one is excluded from that or unworthy of that. And so just echoing those ideas of universal reconciliation, that if one being achieves awakening, that in itself brings ultimately the awakening of all beings. So we spend a lot of time with the Bodhisattva ideal of practicing for the benefit of all beings and not separating our well-being out from each other. And that has a lot to do with how we understand what might be popularly called the afterlife.
Okay, all right, another question. Anybody else have another question that they would like to ask? Some curiosity? All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
With the current, how do I say this? You've addressed a lot of things as far as how you connect with the community and how you connect with the campus community. With the rising numbers of mental health issues and suicide, how is your faith, your congregation looking to connect with not just college students, but kids in elementary school, adults, and you addressing some of those mental health stigmas?
So how does your faith looking to help not only your probably faith members, but also the community with suicide, mental health?
So I'll jump in. Before I did campus ministry, I used to quote a statistic that said that 1 in 4 adults had a diagnosable mental health struggle. And my experience with young adults is that the number is much higher than that, and then I see that sort of spreading up and down in the age and stage range. So for us, mental health is something that we don't tiptoe around, that we invite people to be completely honest about where we are. We have rules about when someone says, "How are you?" the answer should probably never be fine, because that's probably a lie. And And the sort of flip side of that rule is if you're not gonna listen and if you don't care what's going on with someone, then don't say, how are you? And so for us, it's every time that we gather together as a community, we start that with a check-in to recognize that we are human beings that come into that space and that we're carrying things with us. And to create the space where we can hold together the challenges and struggles of a community. And then also, you know, as the Christian part of me would say, it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist and a spiritual director. So I would recommend that for everyone. Not necessarily the Jesus part, but the other two.
If I might, Baha'is understand that we as human beings have a dual nature. We have a spiritual nature through which we connect to God. And we have a physical nature through which we connect to the physical world. And depending upon the training that an individual receives, especially as a child and as a young adult, could depend on what direction they go, where they accentuate their spiritual nature or they accentuate their physical nature. There's an Indian story, a Native American story, that the grandfather is teaching his grandson about life. And he teaches him through the experience of that you have a wolf sitting on your shoulder, and you have, I forget the object, let's say a brother sitting on your other shoulder. And you can determine how you live your life. And the grandson says, well, grandfather, which one wins? He says, the one you feed. So we have what we call a spiritual empowerment program that we have specifically for junior youth, because we recognize that from 11 to 14-year-olds is a very transitional period in a young person's life, where they're starting to experience part of the qualities and abilities of adults, and yet they're still at that breakover point to where they still have a lot of childish notions. And they're trying to discover the world and who they can trust in it and what's going on and how can I be a part of this, or do I want to be a part of this? So we have a spatial program for the 11 to 14-year-olds that we are beginning. We're starting one this coming weekend at the Fairbanks Community Center, because we feel strongly that there's so many young people that are losing themselves and their connections to humanity and to their Creator. And also one of the primary purposes in forming a group is that we want to make it a safe place where they can interact with each other and not be made fun of, not be told lies, but be told the reality of who they genuinely are.
I think it's really important for the church to not feel like we've got all the pieces of the puzzle in our box. I think that's I think having a degree of humility to say that, like, hey, like, we got to outsource some things. So we do take advantage of mental health first aid training, and youth mental health first aid training for our youth pastors. That's a huge part of it. Another thing is creating safe spaces. Traditionally, wherever we're at. I think we're in the Midwest. Sometimes I feel like we're in the South. I don't know exactly where we are, but like, we're somewhere in the middle of America. But middle America evangelical church setting is probably the least safe place to talk about things like sex and gender. We feel very strongly that it should be the safest place to talk about those kind of things. And if we don't, they're gonna go talk about it somewhere else. And we want to make sure that our students in our youth groups, and then our adults in our congregations, and even our kids, honestly, I had the sex talk with my son way earlier than I thought it was going to happen. Like so much earlier than I thought it was going to happen. And but you know, just normalizing it really early, and just being like, hey dude, like here, and he cackled the whole time. He was like that. He's like, that can't be real. And I'm like, oh buddy, it's real. And so he but I'm like, hey, but this is not a one and done conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. This conversation is gonna take us years. And so we want our youth to feel the same way. We want the parents of our kids and our youth to feel like they have an ally in us as church leaders. We wouldn't want we want parents to feel like they bring the kid to the pastor to fix them. Like, that's not it. Like, it's the parents are the ones parenting. We want to resource them. We want to encourage them. We want to help them. We want to say, like, hey, we recognize that there are mental health struggles that are very real at every age. And so if we do need to refer you to a therapist, if we do need to, like, I got a text today. It's like, hey, and I just had 3 off the top of my head. I'm like, boom, boom, boom. These 3 people. This is who I would recommend. And so I'd say, like, for us, like, having a list in our pocket of resources that we can refer people to, I think is really important. And again, having that humility to say, like, hey, like, we're like, we are learning so, and the game is changing daily, right? I mean, like, technology, like, we are taking in so much more information than we were ever designed to take in and process. And so we are so overloaded. I mean, like, our brains are short-circuiting, and it is we're in the midst of a public health crisis. And if as a church, if we just ignore it and be like, oh, these are only spiritual issues, we're putting our head in the sand. So I think we should be better than that, and we try to be. We don't hit it all the time, but we try.
Thank you. In consideration of time, I do want to close our panel out. There's food and there's some refreshments, like drinks and stuff out in the hall. You can continue the conversation or ask more questions to it. I do want to put a plug in that the Have Faith Initiative is part of the collaboratives with CPO, and we do try to collaborate to find out solutions to a lot of these things. The unsheltered, the food insecurities, or we just had, actually the health department was on our last luncheon talking about higher suicide, especially from men in our community, and that is on the rise. And as a faith group, so we were talking about what do we do together to try to combat and target some of this. So our faith communities are trying to work together as best we can and to see what are the hot spots in our community and where we can come together. So round of applause for all of our panelists. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Again, thank you to David Burton right here. If we can give him a round of applause. Love him. If you've not heard of the Neighboring 101 program that the Extension Office has, see this man. He has been inspired. It is an incredible program. Connect to your neighbors, connect to your community, and a lot of the issues that we are trying to deal with as a community, I think can get solved one-on-one relationships and neighboring together and get outside of our own little bubble, right? I'm preaching to the choir right there, David. So if you'd like to see the other 2 sessions of this that were pre-recorded, David also has a link on his site that you can see those. Then we hope you can join us for October and November. So thanks so much. Grab some food. Welcome everybody.
Well, I appreciate the plug there at the end. Deanna Carpenter's a great leader for the interfaith movement and has been very involved with getting churches to work together in the Springfield area. So hats off to her. Thank you for listening to session 3 of the Have Faith in the Ozarks initiative. We have 2 more to go. And hopefully you can, if you have questions, you can reference this video again in the future. All right. Well, have a great day.